What's that? Who knows? We're waiting for the announcements. So, text 29, right? Yeah. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Prabhupada, Paramahamsa, Parivajacharya, Astottara Sadasi Śrīmad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Grantaraj, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Namo Vishwadaya, Namo Vishwadaya, Bhaktivedanta Swami Janamane Namaste, Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Namaste, Sanyavari Paschacharya Satarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. We're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 14, which is it's the forest of material enjoyment. Text number 29, which is quite long. Could you grab me, are the tissues there? Or if you could grab a tissue for us, I appreciate it. I'll just read this. Kadachit Isvarasya Bhagavato Vishnus Chakrat Paramani Adi Dvi Praradha Pavarga Kalopalakshanat Pari Vartitena Vayasa Ramhasa Harata Abrahama Trina Stambadinam Bhutanam Animishato Mishatam Vitrastu Hridayas Tam Eveshwaram Kala Chakra Nijayudham Sakshad Bhagavantam Yagya Purusham Anadritya Pakanda Devataha Kanka Gridra Bhakavata Praya Arya Samaya Pari Hritaha Sanket Yana Bidi Sanket Yena Bhidhate. Word for word. Katachit. Sometimes. Isvarasya. Of the Supreme Lord. Bhagavataha. Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishnu. Of Lord Vishnu. Chakrat. From the disc. Paramanu Adi. Beginning from the time of minute atoms. Dvipraradha. The duration of the life of Brahma. Apavaga. Ending. Kala. Of time. Upalakshanat. Having the symptoms. Parivartitena. Revolving. Vayasa. By the chronological order of ages. Ramhasa. Swiftly. Harataha. Taking away. Brahma. Beginning from Lord Brahma. Trinastamba Adinam. Down to the small clumps of grass. Bhutanam. Of all living entities. Animishataha. Without blinking the eyes. Without fail. Mishatam. before the eyes of the living entities without their being able to stop it. Vitrasta hridayaha, being afraid in the heart. Tam, him. Eva, certainly. Ishvaram, the Supreme Lord. Kala Chakra Nija Ayudham, whose personal weapon is the disc of time. Sakshat, directly. Bhagavantam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yagya Purusham, who accepts all kinds of sacrificial ceremonies. Anadritya, without caring for. Pakanda Devataha, concocted incarnations of God. Man-made gods or demigods. Kanka, buzzards. Gridra, vultures. Baka, herons. Ataprayaha, like crows. Arya Samaya Parihritaha, who are rejected by authorized Vedic scriptures, accepted by the Aryans. Sanketyena, by concoction, or with no basis of authority, indicated by scriptures. Abhidhate, he accepts as worshipable. The personal weapon used by Lord Krishna, the disc, is called Hare Chakra, the disc of Hare. This chakra is the wheel of time. It expands from the beginning of the atoms up to the time of Brahma's death, and it controls all activities. It is always revolving and spending the lives of the living entities, from Lord Brahma down to an insignificant blade of grass. Thus one changes from infancy to childhood to youth and maturity, and thus one approaches the end of life. It is impossible to check this wheel of time. This wheel is very exacting because it is the personal weapon of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes the conditioned soul, fearing the approach of death, wants to worship someone who can save him from imminent danger. Yet, he does not care for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose weapon is the indefatigable time factor. The conditioned soul instead takes shelter of a man-made God described in unauthorized scriptures. Such gods are like buzzards, vultures, herons, and crows. Vedic scriptures do not refer to them. Imminent death is like the attack of a lion, and neither vultures, buzzards, crows, nor herons can save one from such an attack. One who takes shelter of unauthorized man-made gods cannot be saved from the clutches of death. Where was the reference to a lion in the translation? In the verse? Doesn't appear in the word for word, does it? Interesting. Anyway. Purport. It is stated, Harim bina amritim na taranti. No one can save himself from the cruel hands of death without being favoured by Hare, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita it is stated, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Whoever fully surrenders unto Krishna can be saved from the cruel hands of material nature. The conditioned soul, however, sometimes wants to take shelter of a demigod, man-made god, pseudo-incarnation, or bogus Swami or yogi. All these cheaters claim to follow religious principles, and all this has become very popular in the age of Kali. There are many Pashandis who, without referring to the Shastras, pose themselves as incarnations, and foolish people follow them. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has left behind him Śrīmad Bhāgavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Not referring to these authorized scriptures, rascals take shelter of man-made scriptures and try to compete with Lord Krishna. That is the greatest difficulty one encounters when trying to promote spiritual consciousness in human society. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying its best to bring people back to Krishna consciousness in its pure form. But the Pashandis and atheists who are cheaters are so numerous that sometimes we become perplexed and wonder how to push this movement forward. In any case, we cannot accept the unauthorized ways of so-called incarnations, gods, cheaters and bluffers, who are described here as crows, vultures, buzzards and herons. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanam Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahiyam Tadati Svapadantikam Mukkam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Garim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. Harim bina mritim na taranti. If you don't have Krishna's mercy, then you can't be saved. But if you surrender to God's will, to Krishna's will, then, not that you don't have to die, because these are the laws. These are the laws of material nature. But the notion of death is different for one who's in knowledge. And Prabhupada describes, the Bhagavatam describes that death is like going to sleep for some time. Right? We don't worry about going to sleep at night. It's not a major concern. Except on a cold night last night. Did you notice it was very cold? I had to get up and put some socks on. I dislike wearing socks in bed though, because at some point you'll be too hot. Then you have to take them off again. Right? But we don't, when we go to sleep, how many of us worry about going to sleep at night? Most of us just, and then we wake up and it's another day's activities. Right? So similarly also, death is like going to sleep. And for the fortunate living entities, 9 months of sleeping, or maybe even less actually, then we awake again and then off we go. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram jovanam jara. Prabhupada mentions that here in the purport. This is all a function of Hare Chakra, the time factor, which is represented by the wheel, the disc. And it's mentioned here, it's always turning. Time is always, they say, time is marching on. Or one of my friends wrote me a letter the other day, and he said, "Temper fugit." Temper fugit, which is Latin. There's a Latin saying. Temper fugit. You know what it means? Temper means time, and fugit means flies. Time flies, right? So something that we experience. Of course, when we're young, time moves very slowly. Right? When you're 5 years old and you're thinking of when you're going to be 21, it's like, oh, so far away. Right? Things seem to move at an interminable. They move, but so slowly when we're young. But then as you get older, then things start to speed up. And before you know it, it's time to go to sleep. It's time to leave the body. And of course, the misconception is that you only live once, and you die once, and then that's it. That's finished. That's the end. Right? But of course, one of the benefits of the Vedic scriptures, even in the Bhagavatam, we see it on more than one occasion. We see how a particular living entity, an individual, takes more than one birth, and we follow the course of their lives. And so we find in the teachings of the Vedas, especially, this description of the the passage of time through a number of lifetimes for an individual. And so this conception of identifying with the body is dismantled, and the identification is with the soul. It's a different way of perceiving how the movement of time works. It's not that we only have one life, and that at the time of death everything is finished. It's quite logical and reasonable to appreciate or to understand that there will be a future existence for us, even after death. Because there has to be some cause for what we're experiencing now. You're born in a particular body in a particular country. We have Australian, we have Gujarati, Tamil Nadu, Punjabi, Malayalam, Kerala, Tirupati, South America. Where's your mob from? Canada. Righto. They talk about India. They talk about India, right? And people think, ignorant people think, oh, India is a place where everybody is the same, right? They think of India as, but what they don't realise is there's so many different destinations, right? So many different births. Of course, the common factor is the soul. The common factor is in every living, and we see this in every body, we see this development. There's birth, there's development, there's production of byproducts, there's maintenance for some time, there's dwindling, and then departure. And so, this is common for everybody, regardless of wherever we have been born. This is the common manifestation for each body, governed by the time factor, Hari Chakra. And everybody goes through these changes in various births, multiple births. We've had so many births, we've forgotten them all. But in each case, we're born in a particular location as a consequence of the things that we did in the past. The previous life determines the destination that we get in this life. So he ends up in Germany, I end up in Ardrossan, South Australia, a little country town. And I guess what's common certainly to the devotees is, why? Why did all of this? Why me? Why now? Why here? Right? And of course this is the Vedic commentary, if you like. Your past deeds bring you to the point where you are now. And the deeds that you perform in this lifetime will take you into the future. Right? You're getting reactions now. We're getting reactions now to the past activities. The activities that we perform now will produce future results. That's why the devotees are concerned about their future destination more so than what they might acquire or attain in this lifetime. In terms of material facility, they're more concerned about what is my future destination, because we know that as a consequence of the working of the time factor, we'll have to leave this. And Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever you think of at the time of death, that state you will attain without fail. Right? And that each one of us has to die. It's part of the and so death for the devotee is a natural event, a defining. Of course, it's very much a defining event. But the purpose of life is to develop one's consciousness such that the destination at the time of death will be to go back home, back to Godhead, or to be progressive on the path of going back home, back to Godhead. So those who surrender to Krishna understand that it's the state of consciousness or the state of being on the subtle platform that determines our whether we take birth again or not in the material world. And even for the very exalted and advanced devotees, they don't mind taking birth again in the material world, so long as they get an opportunity to render service to Krishna, because that's the eternal state of the living entity, whether he's in the spiritual world or in the material world. Service is the quality of existence that is natural to us, is natural to everyone. And that service to Krishna is the ultimate destination, wherever we may go in the material world. But those without a proper understanding of things as they are follow they're misguided, basically, Prabhupada's saying here. The conditioned soul, however, sometimes wants to take shelter of a demigod, a man-made god, a pseudo-incarnation, or bogus Swami or yogi. Right? Instead of surrendering to Krishna, which is what is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. This is where we get our information. These are our guides, if you like. The Bhagavat. Either the Bhagavat devotee or the Bhagavat book. These are our guides. And our measurement, if you like. What is it? Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. This is how we measure our efforts, by the guidelines given, especially in the Bhagavad Gita and the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. But instead of referring to the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam and to the standard methods that are described within, there are so many charlatans, if you like, such that Prabhupada says here, we worry about how to push on Krishna consciousness because there are so many Pashandis, atheists who are cheaters. So many cheaters. And it's interesting, very graphic here. Imminent death is like the attack of a lion. So everybody is going to have their life plundered. It's all actually, in one sense, we're dying all of the time. Right? From the moment we are born to the death itself, we are burning up the finite amount of time that we have in this lifetime. It's already predetermined. But it gives rise to, fear, a great deal of fear. For those who don't know, they're seeking shelter and protection from the cheaters, but avoid surrendering to Krishna, which is very sad. And in this verse, these personalities are likened to, buzzards, vultures, herons and crows. And these are all vicious animals, especially the heron, right? Herons. They are vicious when it comes to their prey, right? They have a long beak, right? Pointed at the end. And what do they do with that beak? Stab whatever it is that they're going to eat, birds, fish, rabbits, or frogs, you name it. If you happen to live by a river in any particular animal form where the herons cohabit, you are in severe danger. Right? And they just pierce the body of the fish, say for example, and then throw it up, toss it up, and then swallow it whole. Right? Check it out on YouTube. Vicious, merciless. So these cheetahs buzzards, vultures, herons, crows, they eat the bodies, of their prey. So these are likened to the cheetahs. The Bhagavatam can be very harsh. Bhagavatam does not pull its punches. Hogs, dogs, camels and asses. But here the cheetahs are described like these birds of prey that subsist on eating the bodies of their victims. Hare Krishna. So these individuals who don't refer to the authorized, to the standard descriptions of knowledge, of interpretation, of descriptions of what is actually happening. The cheaters, the bogus swamis and yogis, the man-made gods, even the demigods. they're considered to be cheaters if one thinks that one can take shelter of these unauthorized shelters and can be saved from death, will be disappointed. Right? So this is the importance of the Bhagavad Gita and the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. They are provided for us so that there is a standard authority. There's standard descriptions. There's a proper understanding. There's an emphasis and a focus on our spiritual identity and realization of our spiritual persona, our spiritual identity, and the development of consciousness throughout births, various births, rather than the modern focus is on the body and the development of the body, attachment to enjoying the body, and a focus only on the lifetime of this birth. Whereas the Bhagavad Gita and the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam encourage us to cultivate our consciousness, cultivate a proper understanding of identity separate from the body. And so therefore then the changing bodies is not as fearful. And there's a proper taking shelter of the appropriate or the correct, the authorized understanding, the authorized representative of Krishna ultimately, either the spiritual master or the various incarnations of the Lord who appear and will properly protect us at the time of death. We need to know who we should take shelter of. For us, it's Gaunitai and Radha Krishna and Jagannath, Balaram, Subhadra, and our spiritual masters, Srila Prabhupada as the Founder-Acharya and the previous Acharyas, who teach us. If you want to conquer death, here's how you do it. Here's who you are. Here's who you want to be, or need to be, or should be. And so we have an authorized system, we have an authorized process by which we can make a success of the human form of life. And it's not necessarily getting lots of money or lots of influence or power, living in a particular suburb, in a particular city, in a particular country. There is a system, there is a purpose for life. Prabhupada mentions this in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. One should understand what the mission of life is, what it is. And of course that's what's given in the Bhagavad Gita and the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And why the distribution of books is so important, because Srila Prabhupada's teachings only refer back to the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and to the proper utilization of the human form of life. And, to be able to discriminate between who's a cheetah and who's a bona fide representative and who can really give shelter, so that we can identify who's the rascals and who's not. we cannot accept the unauthorized ways of so-called incarnations, gods, cheaters and bluffers, right? Who are described here as crows, vultures, buzzards and herons. Okay, let's finish here. You guys are all getting restless, I notice. Any comments or questions? Priya? Yeah.
The word Harata indicates it's a form of Hari.
Yes.
And Hari means to take away.
Yes. It can mean death.
Hari refers to lion as well.
Lion as well. Yes, good. Thank Rasa for that tidbit of spiritual information. Anything else? Okay, I got a busy day today. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada, and you do too. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Hare Krishna. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai.